Everybody, and welcome back to the Snapshot episode 63. Today we are joined by the legendary Lambyseries GG off the back of the Snapfan World Championship, in which we all participated. I was a caster, Cam was a caster as well, and I believe Lamby did compete. Didn't get the. What was the deal, by the way? If so, you were able to cast top 8 because you didn't make it through Swiss, right? And you kind of organized that later.
Yeah, so it's a very last minute thing. I didn't make it through day one, so I was just like, all right, maybe I want to cast it, and then I got a chance to cast the semifinals.
That's sweet.
Yeah. As the person who was casting originally scheduled for that slot, basically what happened was Lamby and Torikun were like, hey, can we cast some tomorrow? We'll still pay you in full. And I was like, I would love to do half the work for the same rate. I'm a huge fan of that. And that is called value, okay? That is called a value trade. And I have been missing that in Marvel Snap for a while now.
Yeah,
that was a great deal for me. No, and they were great casters as well. Also, I wanted to shout out Matrim, who was my casting partner for the finals, and the second semifinal was very good at filling that Al Michaels play-by-play role.
Yeah, it was a sweet tournament. If you haven't checked it out, I recommend you do. And if you have any interest in Marvel Snap, you should be supporting tournaments like this. Like, these kind of grassroots tournaments are pushing the envelope of what is competitive Marvel Snap right now. And I know Snapfan and Torka and Alphos, they put a lot of effort into making this happen. And I was really pleased with the result. We saw some sweet decks. We had some great Swiss rounds, to be honest. Like, our top seed in Swiss was decks that you probably didn't see coming, but we're going to talk about that expected metagame, Lamby's prep for the tournament, all that good stuff. But first, let's hit on the new cards of the week. First one is Hope Summers 3/4. After you play a card here, you get +1 energy next turn. We're really hyped for this card. Lamby, where do you feel like it landed?
Yeah, so Hope Summers, I honestly think that it made one of the biggest impacts of a new card in quite a long time. So what this card really does is that it lets most like mid-range decks do the Thanos thing, which is it lets you play like a higher top end, higher curve. Which has been missing for a long time, because Thanos always just did it the best, so no one actually tried to play like a heavier curve in other decks. But now we've seen like decks that play both Doctor Doom and Magneto, like mid-range decks, because they can afford to, right? With Hope on 3, you play some stuff on Hope, and then on turn 5 you get to play a 6, and then you get to play another 6. So it really does open up like other decks being able to play the Thanos style, which is really great, right? Not just Thanos does the Ram thing. So I also think, having said that, in Thanos, it just made the deck way more consistent, right? Because the deck has always wanted to either scam out big stuff with Lockjaw, which got nerfed, right? But then now you have another option, which is you can get big stuff out consistently from your hand with more consistently from your hand with a Hope Summers. So I think all around it did make other decks better, but it made Thanos like the clear top dog in the meta right now.
Cam, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Hope is a great card. I do think that, like, I've already seen people being like, you have to nerf this card to 1 energy per turn. And I just feel like stuff like that, it's like, no, you don't. That wouldn't even really change much. Like, the dynamic that allows you to do what Hope allows you to do stays the same. You just made a card less fun and less exciting and less good for no reason, right? Like, what actually, if anything has to change in this metagame, it is probably a card in Thanos and not Hope Summers, because we've seen Thanos be busted with a wide variety of engines, whereas Hope Summers has maybe Thanos that she's really good in and maybe move decks that she's okay in. And it's really, I like the reaction to her as this, like, oh my God, she's actually crazy card. I mean, I think she's quite good. She is a good card, one of the better season pass cards we've had recently, but like also there's quite a lot of competition for that spot. So she's worse than Loki. She's worse than Elsa Bloodstone on release. She's worse than Miss Marvel, and she's better than the others. And so you end up in this spot where it's like, yeah, she's pretty good. She's like the closest season pass card to what originally what was originally like very metagame warping things, but to a greater or lesser degree, those strategies still exist. And one thing I really like about Hope Summers that I want to give credit to Second Dinner for is Hope Summers is probably not a Loki card. And that's a really good thing. Like, giving buffs to decks that are not Loki, right? Yes, she's a Thanos card and that sucks and that happens, right? But having like a mid-range staple card that is just probably not a good Loki card is a really good and unique space to be in, I think. I'm very happy with that.
Yeah.
I honestly think that like when looking at Hope Summers and what she was data mined as and what she came out now, I think they pushed it basically exactly as far as they can. They pushed this card exactly as far as it can go without it being, Loki tier.
Yeah. Do you think that people are potentially a bit sensitive about the power level of Hope Summers because we saw the nerf to Lockjaw, and then shortly after that we see Hope Summers come out and it's just kind of oops all Thanos again? You think that people are tired of that?
I don't want to speak for those people. They could just be tired of like, oh my god, another season pass card I have to get. There's plenty of reasons to be tired of stuff like that, right?
Yeah. What other
it could be
shells does
anything.
the card go in outside of Thanos? You talked a little bit about move. But anything else?
It's like mid-range decks, right? Like most mid-range decks.
High Evo.
Okay, so the high Evo for what it's worth, right? As much as high Evo is still a high Evo deck, like that hasn't changed. But it actually makes the deck better. I tweeted about this because it solves the primary problem of you cannot win without magic, and if magic gets disrupted, you lose. So this deck basically Hope lets you do like the turn 7 play on turn 6 because you get to float 6 energy on turn 5 very often, which is very important, right? Because most of the time this deck, like 9 out of 10 times, your biggest fear of losing with this deck is what if my Limbo disappears or something like that. Yeah. And that makes you have to run Leech for that, and like if they play Snowguard Hawk on the same turn you play Leech, you still die. So like it does make high Evo better, it doesn't make high Evo good, but I would say like yeah, it does help the high Evo deck a lot. It helps like mid-range move-ish shells like with Nightcrawler, Jeff, Craven, Silk kind of stuff, lets you play the multiple 6s in the build. So it really makes mid-range decks and high Evo better, but doesn't still allow them to compete with Thanos, is what is happening right now.
I gotta say, I've been really impressed with the direction Big Baby has been pushing the move decks recently.
It's cuts, right?
Which is to say, he's just been cutting all the move stuff. Like he's just like, he's currently rank 1 in the world, right? Like he's just been like, you know what sucks is Craven, Angela, Silk, Elsa, Bloodstone. You know what's good is like Gladiator, Miss Marvel. The way I look at those decks basically is they're constructed like a Sarah deck because Hope lets you cheat energy the same way that Sarah does, not as necessarily effectively, but in different and unique ways. You sort of just construct them like a Sarah deck where you have all this stuff, right? I've got like Shadow King and Shang-Chi in mine, right? Because I hate dying to Phoenix Force. And I've got like the answers for things of that nature, but I also have, just baseline power, Hope into Magneto, Hope into Doctor Doom, Hope into a bunch of big stuff, Miss Marvel, right? Like that kind of construction, just like you put her in just mid-range good card pile deck. And it's like, that's actually fairly compelling to me, far more compelling than the like synergy-based move stuff. Where I'm at with it, I am playing literally just Silk and Spider-Man as move synergy cards, unless you count Jeff as a move synergy card. They're good with Hope, and that's pretty much why you'd play them. But leading further into that with bad cards like Craven, Angela, and Elsa is just not worth doing. Instead of playing bad cards, you can play good cards. And I think that's like a relatively underexplored aspect of Hope, is the way she lets mid-range interactive decks end up just being able to go really big while not sacrificing interaction. It's actually pretty hard to find a deck that can reasonably play Shang-Chi and Shadow King and also have actual power in it. That's kind of the only one that can do it.
Lamby, can you talk a little bit about some of the play patterns of Hope and Thanos? I know specifically you posted about the Time Stone on 1 into Hope on 3, and that being a very snappable hand. Both with that, you can expand a little bit more upon the theory behind that, but also just some of the general play patterns of Hope and Thanos.
Okay, so the first thing that someone mentioned to me a while back was that Hope Summers is walking Castle Blackstone. It's not really walking Castle Blackstone unless you play Time Stone on turn 1, because then you get to play Hope Summers on turn 2, which is literally turn 2 Castle Blackstone. So I think honestly the new like nuts of Thanos is not even just Mind Stone, it's actually Time Stone on turn 1 into Hope Summers. Like I have lost countable games in one hand after doing that because it's just too backbreaking, like it's too powerful if you go Time Stone on 1 into Hope Summers. The of course less powerful but still extremely powerful option is you just play her on turn 3 and you play something on her on turn 4, and then after that you go 6 into 6, or you go I think one thing that's super underrated is not about the 6 and into 6 interaction. It's more like you get to play stones alongside your big things. It's like super important. Like on turn 6, let's say you have 7 energy, right? Because you ramped a little bit. with Hope Summers, you get to go like Blob plus Soul Stone in another location. Soul Stone is a 1/5 at the end of the game. So that's crazy, right? Like just that one extra energy you get from Hope Summers lets you do so much extra things. And like on that, there's like little things you can do as well. Like let's say you have 6 energy on turn 5, you get to play like something big, and then you play a Space Stone on another location, and then like suddenly your turn 5 becomes every card's now a vision, right? So it's quite crazy. I notice I keep talking about like 1 extra energy per turn, because I feel like Hope Summers shouldn't be, you shouldn't look at her as like you need maximum like extra energy every turn. You just get that 1 extra in Thanos, and you have like the world's your oyster. And like I feel like one of the reasons people accidentally screw up their Hope turns is they really want to max out every single point of energy. They just like stack everything on her, and they realize that they are so lacking somewhere else. Then they die to random prof, die to Alioth. So I feel like the timing where you play your stuff on the Hope Summers is also very important. And I feel like one thing that people need to realize is you don't really need max energy in Thanos, especially. Just that 1 extra actually puts you way over the top.
That 1 extra is also a big reason why Devil Dinosaur is not as good in the list anymore, right? Because like that Soul Stone would have been in your hand. It would have been points on Devil Dinosaur. Like that, you are playing more cards with Hope Summers. You are playing cards like Psylocke and Jeff, and you are putting them on the board, and you are losing them on Devil Dinosaur now. And in addition, the other reason I wanted to dive into this, though, because the reason turn 2 Hope Summers is so good is because it lets you accelerate. You go turn 3 into 5, right? Because Hope Summers right now is like a lot of decks with Hope Summers are playing Vision, but that's not the most natural fit, because you end up having to play Hope Summers on turn 3, play cards into her turn 4, Vision there, and then you have to do something else with like whatever 1 or 2 energy you have. In Thanos, if you are able to like get a Hope Summers on 2, play something on 3, Vision the Hope Summers on 4, then suddenly you're just a full energy ahead. Then she is actually that walking Castle Blackstone, right? And I just think that like it's actually kind of shockingly smart to have her at a 3 cost instead of anything else. Like that fits very, very well, I think.
Yeah. All right. We had one other card release, which is Pixie. 2/1 says on reveal, shuffle the cost of all cards in your deck that started there. I saw a quote from you, Lamby, said this card is non-functional at the moment. Just expand upon your thoughts.
Yeah, so when I say non-functional, I don't actually mean that it's unplayable to that bad of an extent. The card is playable, but I know KM knows this. When I say it's playable or it's alright or it's okay, you just know that I'm not very interested in the card, because it's just okay. It's just basically okay. Like I've tried it in various shells before, like even in the one that people have been talking about, right? Like you run a decent amount, a small amount of 6s and a high amount of lower cost cards, so that you can get like the good swap more often enough. But it doesn't actually happen as often as you think, because I think Pixie people don't realize that a lot of the time they don't realize that it doesn't actually swap, it just randomly shuffles. So there's a good chance that the same cards can get like the same kind of cost, and you know the big cards can still swap with the big cards, shuffle with the big cards, and then nothing changes. Also, every time I see people play Pixie on 2, it's very rare that they just have the perfect draws into like the perfect discounted cards. Often their turn 3 and 4 is like very dead. They just like do nothing because they draw unplayable big stuff, you know. I mean, obviously you can supplement that with like maybe playing She-Hulk Sunspot to float, but that's like copium, I feel. So I don't think Pixie right now has a perfect deck. I want to be proven wrong though, because I think the card is interesting. But currently it feels like it's like, you know, when you play TFT and then you try and force a composition. I feel like Pixie feels like you're trying to force it into a deck and make a deck around it when you could be doing other things that might be better, you know. That's my current take on Pixie.
So Lamby, there is there's like a meme with this podcast. People like to comment every single episode and tell us that it's their favorite. They tell us that it's their favorite Flesh and Blood, their favorite Magic the Gathering, their favorite Legends of Runeterra, their favorite Dune podcast. Literally anything is not Marvel Snap. Right. And you've given them the permission.
Yes.
Tell us that this is their favorite TFT podcast. So
you know the crazy part? If this is actually their favorite TFT podcast, I think you guys just made it really big, because TFT is omega huge, right?
We just broke out, Brendan. We made it.
Yeah, he was like, you know that one time when you force a composition? I'm like, yeah, every fucking time I play TFT.
Hold on, I want to jump into something here. I think everyone needs to understand their Lamby scaling, right? This is important to understanding how to scale Lamby's sentences when he says something is good or bad. I have a lot of experience with this, right? Yes. So Lamby will call something tier 1.5, and what he'll mean is it's tier 2.5, and he would never actually play it. Or like when he was talking about that high Evo deck on Twitter, he was like, this could be tier 1.5. And it's like, that is Lamby code for I would never take this to a tournament.
It's true.
I would never play this.
It's true.
Like Lamby is a tier 1 gamer. If he says something isn't tier 1, like that is what that means. Take it to mean what it means.
Yes.
And so when you're talking about something like Pixie, it's like, it's not unplayable, but what you mean is if I were trying to win and I had stakes, I would never
look at
play
this
it.
card.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to say. No, but I put the high Evo in tier 1.5 because like a lot of people can just take that deck and hit infinite. Like it's a very hit infinitable deck, straight up. And it got a bit better because of Hope Summers. But KM is not wrong.
There is a guy who has beaten me with high Evo. Like, I don't even think he's running Pixie or Hope in it. I'm not sure. It's just like normal high Evo. I think he's probably got Hope in it, but I just never saw it, right? I was just like absolutely losing to it. It's just like, those are just cards that do stuff I'm very happy for. Like, I like high Evo as a shell. Like, I think it's a good thing. Can we get him to be a 4/7 again? Can we revert high Evo to 4/7? Is that too far? I feel like I liked the game more when high Evo was just like, you get this and you got some decks, dude. I feel like that was a good thing.
We've got a lot of questions this week on cards that could potentially get unnerfed in the context of today's metagame. Let's head on to the Snapfan World Championship. Cam, I'm not sure if you were testing for it in the sense that you were playing with players that were also going to be playing in the tournament.
I know.
Yeah. So, Lamby, what was your expected metagame leading into the day one?
Give me a sec.
Not the actual metagame.
Yeah, I tweeted my expected metagame and it was actually really very close. Okay, so I expected, because I prepared with Jet exclusively for this event. So we broke down the field to be 40% Thanos. It ended up being about 50%. We expected 30% Loki and ended up being way less. Expected about 10% Hela, which was about there, I guess. Expected about 10% Annihilus Bounce when there was absolutely zero, which was surprising. And we expected about 10% Rogue decks, PF, Sarah, Discard, Destroy. Yeah, so it was about there. It was quite close except for like 0 and Annihilus Bounce and even less Loki than we expected.
Yeah, so I have the actual metagame here. It starts off with Thanos at 35.48%, Loki Thanos at 9.68%, Loki at 9.68%, Discard at 6.45%, and Phoenix Force at 4.84%. And then Hela, you talked about, is also at 4.84%. Yeah, an incredibly high Thanos showing, but you expected that. What were some considerations that you took into deck building? Because you brought Thanos. Like, what were some of the decisions that you were tweaking in the deck in terms of like your expected metagame? What cards did you add?
Okay, so I think to talk about this, I need to talk like just a brief bit about like what I wanted to do for this event as well. So the idea that we wanted to do for this event, like, because I practice and play a lot of different like card games like in competitions as well and prepared for all of them, right? So the general winning strategy is always just play the best deck and then beat the most popular decks, right? So the idea going into this was beat Thanos and Loki, which was the plan. So what I realized was that Loki was never the bring, because now that with Hope Summers introduced into the game, right, the gap between playing Loki on 4, even turn 3, is very easily covered by just having Hope Summers on curve as well. So, and Thanos' early game is just strictly superior to Loki's early game, right, because the stones are so powerful. So the Loki was never the bring because it was like the inferior deck out of the two. So I was looking at Thanos and how to beat Thanos. And I feel like I almost brought Annihilus Bounce, because my win rate versus Thanos with Annihilus Bounce was like 10 and 2 or something. It's crazy, but that was just Conquest. So I tested the deck a bit and I realized that Annihilus Bounce was absurdly bad into rogue decks. Like it was really bad into what's that called? Into like Nimrod, Phoenix Force stuff, which we did expect a decent amount of. Okay, not decent amount, but for rogue decks, a decent amount of. And also like random tech, it's a bit more difficult to beat. And also we did expect a certain level of Professor X in Thanos, which was really awkward for Bounce to deal with. So ended up just going back to Thanos and playing Thanos that could beat the mirror, which we very quickly found out was that you just play more big stuff than them, not enough Shang-Chi's to go around. I think I say this a lot. Really not enough Shang-Chi's to go around, which is also the good part and the problem of my build, because my build was basically saying that I'm not going to prof you, you're going to prof me, but I have Jeff to maybe cover a bit of the difference. I'm going to play Carl, I'm going to play Scar, I'm going to play big stuff. But I ended up cutting the Devil Dinosaur in this build. But I feel like if I look back, I actually should have just played the Devil Dinosaur in this build.
Yeah.
Because I'm going very heavily on playing big stuff more than you. And actually, one of my mirror matches, actually round 1 versus D Money, he got his revenge from Creator Clash. He beat me in round 1. Not super convincingly. He was very good at drawing Mind Stone. But like, other than that,
shots fired.
Okay,
Shots
no, wait.
fired
No,
at D-Money.
it wasn't a convincing win, but he won. Okay, let's just put it that way. And yeah, he won. So, but one thing I realized very heavily when I played against him was just him having the Dino really supported the fact that I really had not enough Shanks to go around.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was really hard for me. Like the game deciding game was literally, he had Dino, I had something a bit smaller, and I was losing just cause I was a bit smaller. Everything else was the same. So that was crazy.
Can you read out your
shoutouts to
list
D
for
Money.
us as well?
Oh, my list. Okay. Hold on. Let me click Twitter. Okay. So my list is Psylocke, Jeff, Mobius, Hope Summers, Wave, Shang-Chi, Carl Obsidian, Vision, Blob, Thanos, Scar, Magneto. And in hindsight, if I knew there was going to be this little Loki, I would cut Mobius for the dinosaur.
So I prepared with Moyen prior to the tournament. He competed in the tournament, I think it went 3-2. We brought Thanos as well. Our list was Jeff, Mobius, Hope Summers, Wave, Shang-Chi, Carl Obsidian, Vision, Devil Dinosaur, Blob, Thanos, Scar, Magneto. So basically, do the thing.
Hold on.
Right?
Can I reveal something about how Moyen got that list?
How so?
So, Moyen, I'm leaking DMs right now. All right, you ready?
I know this. I know this.
On March 8th, Moyen DMs me, "Hey KM, what should I play for the Snapfan thing?" And I respond, "Man, I wish I knew. The meta's so new. Stuff to consider." And then I sent him the same list of stuff to consider that I sent you.
Yeah,
Brendan.
And I sent that to him.
And he was like, "Do you have a 12-card list you can recommend me instead? I literally have not played since Rivals and Conquerors." And so I just sent him the Thanos list that I did a YouTube video on that day. And as far as I know, he just ran it.
So we had your list from Twitter. So we had the Profx Psylocke list,
Right.
and we made some last minute cuts on Professor X and Psylocke, not for potentially the right reasons. We did want to be the deck that was doing a thing that opponents had to respond to. We added Mobius because we thought there'd be more Loki.
right?
Yeah, more Loki. It's also not bad against some rogue decks. Like it's not bad against the
Discard, right?
Yeah, discards. And the fact that it has any utility, like a non-zero utility against opposing scars, is not bad. And then the Profx, like, honestly, we got the Profx because our expected metagame was not necessarily what showed up. We just didn't think the Profx was as good into some other decks. And we wanted to be putting the big points on the board and having the opponent being forced to shang us. So I
gotta say, I am continually extremely impressed with the Profx. Like, I keep thinking it'll be terrible, but I actually at this point think that's just like, no, like this is like, you want to like not get randomly run over by Hela and Phoenix Force, you probably have to play the Profx, right? Like it's just like you'll just randomly win games with this card. And in a deck where playing a 5-drop is very often playing off curve, so to speak, I want my 5-drop to just win the game. Like if I'm going off curve, the 5-drop has to win the game. Is basically how I approached the Professor X.
So, question.
I actually have quite a bit of stuff to share about what we just talked about.
Okay, go ahead.
I think it's quite interesting. So, it's kind of interesting because I just suddenly remember a lot of things. So, firstly, like, remember I was talking a little bit about the Devil Dinosaur and how it mattered in the D Money match, right? And then you mentioned Moyen bringing Thanos. So, firstly, the first thing I want to talk about is that when I paired with Jet, we were like, okay, so half the players in this tournament are going to return just for this event and just disappear thereafter. So, if players are going to do that, what can they logically bring? And to be honest, 6 months ago, it was just Thanos or Darkhawk, right? So we actually allocated a small portion of, okay, maybe Zabu Darkhawk, because they can't bring anything else. They're not going to spend all the tokens on new cards. And obviously Thanos, because, Thanos, everyone had Thanos back then. So, and Thanos is the best deck now. So it makes a lot of sense that the Thanos view is just absurdly way higher because everyone had that before they quit the game for a period, like the old competitors. And it's easy to pick up again. And one more thing on the Devil Dinosaur was like when Moyen was actually competing quite fervently and like actively in this game, I had a match versus him in one of the tournaments, and the only reason I was just deck diffing him at that point in time was because I don't know why he had Iron Man in his deck and I had Dinosaur, and he just was so small compared to my height of my Dino, and then he literally came into my Twitch chat right after that. I was like, oh man, I should have played Dino. So this is quite funny because now I cut the Dino and he's playing the Dino, and honestly I think he did a bit better than me in this tournament. So it's quite
I want to say he went 4-2.
Yeah, he went 4-2.
Sorry, he went
exactly.
4-2. I said 3-2. I just missed the last round.
Interesting stuff, yeah.
I know he was like one of those matches. He really felt like it was super close. He should have won, but yeah, I mean, it's crazy. He almost top 8. But the secret sauce is he almost played Legion instead of Dino. He's like, I don't know, man. I really like Legion. It was good. It's like I was like, bro, you have one cost Legion in your deck. You don't need to play Legion. You got Reality Stone.
I don't know. I think Legion's like it's the kind of card that'll just like randomly get people. And I'm not necessarily opposed to it, honestly. Like, it has that same value Professor X does, where it's like, look, if I'm going off curve, I want something that just wins me a bunch of cubes. I want to win a lot.
Yeah.
So, Lamby, I have a question, because in terms of a metagame of a tournament, we have layers of a metagame, right? So we have a layer 1 metagame, which is the best deck, and that was relatively clear at this tournament. Layer 2 would usually be considered deck that beats the deck. What deck is that? What deck cleanly beats Thanos here?
Okay, so there is no clear Thanos beater in the meta right now. Which is the problem. If not, I would have brought it 100%. But the thing is, there are decks. Okay, so Thanos is in a very interesting spot right now. It is the clear best deck because it does the good thing most often and wins the most things. But it is not an unbeatable good deck for what it's worth. Like, it's really not an unbeatable good deck. If you look at what some people brought in this tournament, because I'm pretty sure they believed it would beat Thanos and to a certain extent Loki, they brought this card. They brought Hela. They brought Phoenix Force, Nimrod things. Like, all these things, right, is actually not difficult for them to beat Thanos. It's just that they don't do it as consistently. Like, this card, for example, is super linear, but there's no counters, right? Like, no one plays freaking Lady Deathstrike. So there's no counters to the deck. Like, Dracula is bigger than Blob often enough, like facts. So, like, this card actually gets more points than Thanos very often. It's just that the deck is super linear. Hela, well, if it's meant to be, Hela beats everybody, right? So Hela is one of those decks as well. So actually, Thanos is not unbeatable. It's just consistently better than other decks, but it's really not unbeatable.
It's tier 1. The other decks are tier 1.5. They're just bad enough. They're bad enough by a certain extent. Thanos is enough ahead, and the other decks don't compete on a different enough axis that there is almost no reason to bring a different deck. And like,
I wanna vouch for the discard players here, because you were talking about your expected metagame and you group discard and rogue decks, and I don't think that's fair.
We thought discard. That's why we kind of put Mobius in our deck, because we thought discard was going to be higher represented. We were like, oh shit, and we were totally wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm not saying I expected discard to be super highly represented, but I am saying I'm very unsurprised by its general good performance in this metagame. Like, this is discard is a deck that I made a video on. I want to say, like, probably the Friday after Proxima Midnight came out, where I was like, this deck is actually good. Like, this is actually like a legitimate, real deck you have to consider when playing now. Like, this is as good as the deck has ever been.
Yes.
And I think that for filling the role that it does of being relatively tech invulnerable and going very, very tall and having just a lot of weirdly compelling mix-ups on the later turns of the game, discard is a great deck. I will go as far as saying that. Like, it's a shame that right now the best deck is effectively like a big ass ramp deck, right? Like, that's sort of the issue it's running into, where like discard is like your typical mid-range deck and it's running up into this sort of big ramp wall that is Thanos. But it's a genuinely good archetype right now as filling that mid-range role, in my opinion. Like, that's a real deck that is worth respecting.
100%. I agree with you 100% also, because now I'm looking at my untapped stats for what I practiced during the last 4 days before the event. The first one, my top 2 win rates were actually bounce, but I didn't bring it because it's not very great into rogue decks. Then I have, interestingly enough, I have the Thanos, yes. I have Hela discard here. I have Pure discard here. I had Phoenix Force, but I'm pretty sure I gave up on it really quickly. And I had Loki, which didn't do really well. So yeah, I actually had like an inkling that I might possibly consider gravitating towards this card a little bit, but I just decided not to do it.
Yeah, and
it's better than being called rogue, I swear.
Yeah, I misspoke earlier. I said we added the Mobius for the discard. That was not true. We added Mobius for Loki. We actually cut the Profex because of discard, because discard has so many early game scalers. The Profex feels a bit
true
hard to place. Yes, and that was immediately off the back of me testing versus Kava, who I casted with in the tournament. And I was just playing Thanos against him, and I had Profex in my deck, and I was like,
it's so useless, right?
I just have this.
I just feel like Thanos can take that. Like, oh no, my 5-drop is useless. Who cares? I'm playing Magento. I'm fine.
Magenta.
I'm good.
No, but it's
I'm a
crazy. The moment they discard the Proxima, like they play Blade into Proxima, you're just forever behind. It's crazy, man.
It's like it's a good deck. It's the modern day Broodabs. Like that's what it is.
A little
it's
bit,
modern
a little bit.
Broodabs, right?
Yeah, that's pretty funny because we actually thought it'd be the third most represented deck, which it kind of was, but we thought it would be like a maybe higher than 10% of the metagame. Like actually, I don't know. I was pretty surprised when there was only 4 discard players, but yeah, I mean, in our testing, I thought that was like the point slam deck that I really had to sort of calibrate off of. You know, outside of the Thanos mirror, and then of course Loki, I was like, okay, here is the premier sort of put points on the board. Your tech cards don't really work, and like that was our litmus test, was a discard deck, and I thought it was insane.
Yeah, it is. It is the premier operator in that spot right now.
Well,
I will also say that one adaptation that I kind of liked, and I thought this was just a very funny development, were the people putting Loki in Thanos, because the actual cards you play in Loki are so goddamn bad that you're just like, I'm going to play Loki in Thanos and try to beat the mirror. But the funniest thing about that to me is that every, veteran Thanos player in the entire tournament was like, well, I'm not losing a Loki, I'm playing a Mobius.
Yeah.
So they had the reverse tech. Like the finals of the entire tournament was a Loki Thanos versus a Mobius Thanos. It was like, all right, I guess that's how it is right now. Like Thanos can even run the counter to the counter and just have that be what it is. Yeah. Is this just a long way of asking for second dinner to nerf Thanos? Maybe.
No, please don't. I like the deck. I really do.
I think it very clearly deserves to eat one at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably coming. Let's be real. But I want to talk about some of the top 8 lists, specifically the not Thanos top 8 list. So yeah, we had a lot of Thanos in top 8, but we had some funky decks really close out on top of Swiss. One was a Black Knight deck. That is also Black Knight, Zabu, Miss Marvel, so some other good stuff in there. We had a Hela deck. Then we had a legit move deck, like a move deck with Heimdall and Spider-Man 2099. We talked about Glenn, touting the Spider-Man 2099 deck. Maybe that's it. And then we had...
It actually is. He did confirm.
Actually is that
he did confirm that's the deck?
Not that that's the exact deck, but that's the
player. The player was the one that gave him the...
What?
Not gave him, but like he got the idea from there. Yeah. It's the exact player. Yes.
Wild. That's wild. That comes full circle. What are y'all's thoughts on these decks and like how? So this was a relatively large tournament, not insanely large, but it was an extremely competitive tournament. How were these decks able to rise to the top through the Swiss rounds? These I think all of our top seeded decks were like these rogue decks.
No. The top 2 were, but the move deck was actually the only 4-2 to make it in.
Got it.
On tiebreaker.
Yeah, so
they went 4-0.
Same question though, like how were they able to sort of rise and perform through that metagame? Are these lists particularly powerful? Are the players particularly skilled? Is it a combination of both? Just want to hear your thoughts.
Okay, so I actually thought about this, and I'm quite sure this is what actually happened. So let's start with the move deck first. Okay, we don't really need to talk about the Thanos decks, because even though they are like different Thanos decks, we already established.
Let me read off the list too for our listeners. That's Ghost Spider, Human Torch, Iron Fist, Dagger, Beast, Kraven, Cloak, Negasonic, Teenage Warhead, Vulture, Hercules, Spider-Man 2099, Heimdall.
Okay. Yeah, so the Thanos decks, even though they're slightly different, we know they're already the top dog. We've established that, so nothing much to say about that. But the move deck, I can assure you that a lot of their wins were because their opponent didn't know what the deck could do. Like, I can promise you that. Not trying to say that the player wasn't good, but a lot of the extra wins that they got was because it's something that you never practice against, And I feel like in a tournament where everybody knows what's going on, what to do, know how to play Marvel Snap, any lack of information about something is a weapon that you can utilize to beat your opponent. So I feel like maybe this was not his pure intention. Maybe he loves this deck, but like, a lot of the wins, like literally, there was a game casted where his opponent almost threw because they didn't read what Hercules did. And
yeah, I remember that. I was casting.
Yeah, but the opponent didn't lose. But the point is like, it's down to that simple kind of stuff, like not knowing the card subconsciously what it does, right? This move deck has a lot of that, because you don't practice against this deck on ladder or in Conquest. It's a very unique entity of its own. So I think a lot of wins and extra cubes and non-retreats from the opponent came from here. But of course, they probably did practice a lot with this deck, so that's why they were confident in bringing it to the top 8. So the Hela deck...
Hold on, can I talk about the move one real quick? I want to do this like deck by deck because he's going to have to read out each deck each time we do it. So I want to talk about the move deck real quick because I think you're underestimating it. And this might just be because for whatever reason, like there are multiple people in the top 100 NA who will play this crap. Like this is actually a deck I've played against a decent amount for reasons that are totally outside of my control. And
I've never, by the way.
Yeah, like what it is, NA baby. We got it sometimes. Sometimes NA's got it like that. If you wanna play against just weird stuff, NA is the region for you. That's what we've got. But yeah, no. So I've basically played against this deck multiple times, and I kind of have a sense for what it's trying to do. And basically, and this is also coming from talking to Shuri Enjoyer and Cam Worst. Were playing it in relatively higher levels of Infinite here. The deck is effectively trying to operate in the space of where Discard or Broodabs or Silky Smooth would, with Beast allowing it to protect its big investments, right? It's operating in a space where it's like, all right, there's no Shadow King, there's no Killmonger. We set up, payoff on the final turn, just bigger than everything else, right? Or we set up, beast our stuff back, just bigger than everything else. Or we set up, and stay below Shang-Chi the entire game, right? There are multiple ways for the deck to do that, but like fundamentally what it's doing is just being really good at points. That is the major thing that it's trying to do. When Shuri Enjoyer was playing the deck, he had an Enchantress in the deck, like just actually a tech card in there. When Big Baby was playing the deck, there was a Shang-Chi in there. The version that the player, I believe his name is pronounced Reget, but I'm not positive, brought to the tournament had no tech in any way, was going for pure power with Hercules in the deck. And that is generally the kind of plan when you're just very confident in like, I'm going to beat a bunch of Thanos players like this. Like I'm going to make the world's largest dagger because everyone's playing Thanos. And I'm going to dagger that Hope Summers lane and she's going to be huge. And then I'm going to bounce her back and then I'm going to do it again. Unaccountably large. I'm beating Thanos on points. That's the plan. And I think it's real. I think like it's not just people misplayed against this guy because I'm sure they did. It's very weird and very hard deck to play against, but it does do something that is real, in my opinion. Yeah, the stats that it has over Thanos is very relevant because it's very easy to be bigger with this deck than Thanos. Like you mentioned the dagger interaction, right? It's very easy 212 minimum, by the way, because just one Hope Summers location, if you move it even just once. The funny thing is I actually practiced this deck that he brought. Like I had like 10 of the 12 cards that was in his list, but mine was super tacked out. Mine was like Shang-Chi Mobius. I didn't end up bringing this deck, but yeah, I had Shang-Chi Mobius in this because we actually expected Loki. And we've also, like you said, Beast bouncing your vouchers or daggers is just it's so much extra stats that's so cheap, right? So it's actually very real. Just that I feel like this deck is such a good 8-cuber deck. Like if you want to bring this on ladder and like scam 8 cubes, because your opponent is just like, wait, how are things moving? I'm just gonna ship it. They're gonna lose 8 cubes randomly for sure. Yeah, it's a good deck. I think like, yes, there was the element of surprise here, but this is not just like a guy winning with a pile, right? This is a guy who's really good at his deck. And also the deck is in a position to attack what the metagame ended up being.
Yeah. And I feel like for me, this deck was the biggest surprise.
Really?
Yeah, to be honest.
Honest to God?
What?
Black Knight was a bigger surprise to me.
Yeah, no, Black Knight was the biggest surprise to me as well.
I mean, so in terms of metagame representation, Black Knight, 100% conversion through Swiss to top 8.
Yes.
One player playing Black Knight, one player makes it to top 8 with that card. Just absolutely insane. Let's go to that deck next. That's going to be Black Knight, Blade, Zabu, Jeff, Mobius, Lady Sif, Ghost Rider, Shang-Chi, Miss Marvel, Sarah, Magneto, Infinite. So is this deck a pile or no?
No.
So
it's good. It's good. Do you know why it's good? This is like my big Black Knight theorem. Because Thanos lost Kyera. Which means this deck actually gets to be I'm going to have a relevant Shang-Chi into Thanos and also have a lot of points deck. It gets to do that again. Thanos used to just like absolutely run this deck over because it'd be like, all right, you play one big guy on the final turn of the game, which is why the deck sort of went away from being a Sarah deck in the first place. It's why we were playing, Cull Obsidian, Annihilus stuff with Big Baby's build, right? Like, the reason I think this deck gets to succeed again is because there's less leech running around. There's no leech. There's no leech. There's no Kyera. And so suddenly this deck gets to be I'm playing 3 extremely relevant cards on the final turn of the game, right? I'm going Sarah with a Zabu, and I'm playing Shang-Chi, Ghost Spider, Ebony Blade. Like, I can do that again, and it works. And I think that's, like, shout out to this guy. That's all I'm saying. I don't know if he did this on purpose, but I think it ended up working for a real reason.
Yeah.
Actually,
our number 1 seed as well, I believe. I think they went undefeated.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time. But my opinion from KM is very, very different on this deck. Like very, very different. Okay, so
Really?
yeah, very different. So okay, the player that played this is Durok, right? If I'm not wrong. Is it
Yeah,
Durok?
it is.
Yeah.
Durok. Yeah, okay. So I know Durok as a player. Like, he's just a very good player. Like, in general, firstly, he's a very good player, right? And I honestly don't think this Black Knight deck has changed. Okay, yes, there's less Kyra, so there's more Shang. But like, there's more chance for you to Shang something. But like, at the end of the day, I don't think this deck has gained much from since the last time we've seen it. Like, I think personally, like, this player could play a Thanos and also make top 8. It's my personal opinion. Like, which is why I'm very surprised that this deck is in the top 8. Not cause of like he could play anything to get into the top 8. Like, I feel like if it's meant to be his day. I'm quite surprised he chose this deck, because I don't think this deck is that good. Like, I don't think it's doing any special things that you would rather do it than playing a Thanos deck and just getting here as well. So I don't know, man. I already attribute it to the player just knowing what he's doing and just being a really good player. But I don't think this deck really benefits. Like, the deck choice doesn't really benefit him, in my opinion. Yeah.
I do think it was pretty unfortunate for him just how much Mobius Thanos there was in the top 8.
Yeah.
Or it was just like, once you see the lineup in the top 8, it's just like, oh man, that does not feel like a choice you can reasonably make anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, what you played Mobius as well in your Thanos list, right, Lamby?
Yep.
Like, was it reasonable, do you think? I mean, obviously you didn't choose. Was it reasonable to not play Mobius in this metagame if you're bringing Thanos and you're expecting a lot of Loki, and then it just has this additional utility of hosing other decks? Like, it just feels like it was one of the cards to have in the deck, especially when we have flexible slots.
Yeah, it's such a flexible tech card, right? Like, even like without the Loki mention, like this card and sometimes random locations, Dream Dimension, Elysium, blah blah blah. Like it is actually quite a relevant, like, free spot inclusion. But like, I'm still not 100% sure, because like, I at the end of the day was really missing Devil Dino, and like, if I really knew there was less Loki, Mobius was still the easy card for me to just play Devil Dino, which would supplement my game plan a bit more. So yeah.
All right, and finally the Hela deck, which is Blade, Morbius, Corvus Glaive, Lady Sif, Dracula, Jubilee, Black Cat, Hela, Magneto, Giganto, Infinite, Death. Where does Hela land? Sort of. I know you guys have probably talked about this show. So where does Hela land post Lockjaw nerf, particularly?
It's
Take
it's what it's worse. It's a worse deck, obviously. It's definitely a worse deck. But like, I've been flirting with the idea of like playing some Hela, just because like, you can really hybridize this deck a little bit. Like, I've seen players playing this with like Dracula, and this player included the Morbius just for an additional bit of power. Like, I actually think Hela with Corvus still can survive. Like, if you play Corvus on turn 3, the world is suddenly your oyster, as long as you don't discard Hela, right? You can pass turn 4, then you drop Infinite on turn 6, then you play Hela on turn Infinite on turn 5, Hela on turn 6. The deck still works. It's just that without Lockjaw, I would say that the Skyroll potential is a lot less. But it's one of those decks that can easily be taller than Thanos. And the scary part is that you don't know where it will be taller, because obviously it's a Hela deck, right? So it's a less high rolly deck, but at the same time, I would say still very relevant in the meta, because it's one of those decks that can really just be bigger than Thanos.
Corvus Glaive, when you don't discard Hela,
So
is
scary.
damn near one of the strongest cards in the game. Like,
Yeah.
So scary.
when you are like, you play a Corvus Glaive on turn 2, discard anything on turn 3, discard anything but Hela, you're probably snapping. Like, it's that good, right? I had a gold conquest grant. I completed a gold conquest with an Agatha deck based on these principles. I was playing Agatha, and it was just every time I played Corvus on 2 and on 3 and didn't discard Hela, I would snap. And I won a gold conquest against real people playing real decks with that strategy. Like, I just, there's this weird thing that happens with Corvus where it's like, yes, this card is like hyper specialized, but I feel like of all the 3-drops in the game, it might have the highest played cube rate. Like where you play this card and it happens the way you want, you are absolutely winning. And if it doesn't happen the way you want, well, you're a Phoenix Force deck that just didn't draw the stuff, right? Like there's some value in being a deck where your snap condition happens so early that you are rarely getting snapped on before you know if you have your deck's game plan online, right? And I think that Corvus does provide that. It's incredibly strong when it works. I think, it's a downgrade from Lockjaw Hela.
Yeah.
But frankly, it's kind of scarier to play against.
Yeah. There's one thing I want to mention, which is I don't want to tangent too much, but I just noticed it because we were talking about discard, the power of discard, and the lack of representation. Almost discard. I mean, it was like top four represented, but there's 4 players on it. Nevertheless, top 4 represented deck, 67% win rate. Closest win rate to that is 56 in Loki Thanos, which was 2 more players on it. That is insane. The win rate is very high. Like
good deck.
Yeah.
One thing that was really impressive about the discard builds, I don't know if you got granular enough with them and you looked at like the individual builds people brought. A lot of the normal discard players are not playing the safe version; they're playing the Corvus version.
Yes.
Okay. Why is that? Why do you think that is?
I wish I knew. I like the safe version. I think it's just Corvus Glaive is really good. Like
what is
every
the
time I
safe
play against
version?
them, the safe version is no Corvus and all your discards are targeted, right?
Okay.
Like But like there are versions where it's just like whenever you play against it on ladder, right? And what'll happen is like if they hit like a swarm earlier, right? Suddenly they're incredibly favored to hit the swarm again with the Corvus, right? They have Proxima Midnight in there. They have Apocalypse in there. And suddenly it's just like, the Corvus Glaive, it's a 3/5 that usually helps me, right? I'm not using the energy very well, but it's fine. Maybe I'll get a Helicarrier, And so like when you do things like, all right, what you do is you cut Meek, you get a Helicarrier in there so you have more targets for the Corvus. You end up in a situation where like you can run out of gas and still Helicarrier into more gas. And it is a little bit risky and definitely changes your matchup profile, but I think it was clearly the dominant form of discard that people brought to this tournament.
Yeah. One discard like so-called master that I know, this player called ZT4, he actually won like a few decent sized tournaments with this card, and I think they brought this card to this event as well.
Corvus.
Yeah, they really like the classic discard with like going in on Swarms and Apocalypse and Dracula. I feel like that one is like super consistent in terms of its game plan. And Swarms is like one of the most it's very funny, right? 0 cost card, but I think it's like people don't realize how OP it is. Like it's a 0/3, and if you get your curve, it's a 0/12 because you have like 4 Swarms in your hand. Like it's a 0/12, man. Like Swarm is just crazy. Like when you hit it early, like I built the discard build that I played for the most part was also like KM mentioned, a lot of targeted discards just to abuse the fact that I get to discard Swarm again and again and again and again. And I still have the random Corvus in there just because like you said, once you hit the Swarm one time, the Corvus just like becomes like just utility. Like even if you discard only one of your other Swarms, it's gonna be like a 0/6 extra plus a 3/5 on the board plus 1 extra energy. So like very little downside, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, regardless, fascinating tournament in regards to metagame. I know that Thanos is sort of it's still kind of fresh in everybody's mind, and it did win the tournament, was very popular. It did have a good win rate. It's a fantastic deck, but we saw disruption in that metagame. We saw some rogue decks make the top 8, and we saw some performances outside of decks that were not Thanos in the form of discard. So check it out if you haven't yet. And I mean, I would recommend what Cam did. If you're looking for a deck to hit Infinite with or to mess around on ladder, you should look at some of these non-Thanos top 8 decks. They seem very fun to play, and a lot of
actually. You should look at my YouTube video where I recommend decks to play on ladder. You should give me that sweet view count.
Are you recommending these decks?
I actually did have Reget's deck in there and the Hela deck in there as the like shining examples of what those archetypes look like. Yes, my
favorite part of the tournament was watching Phoenix Force on stream. I was not casting, but the casters were kind of talking down Phoenix Force, and they're like, nah, it's a bad deck. It's a bad deck. And then in the hands of, I believe, Get Wrecked, there was a order of operations in regards to Ghost Spider with Phoenix Force. And let's say everybody was very, very surprised about what happened. We got to learn some Marvel Snap loopholes.
Phoenix Force
who was not
is
surprised?
Legit great.
my entire Discord chat was
Yeah, I
not
know.
surprised when they saw the play that Get Rack made, right? Then they were like, "Oh, that's the nuts, that's the nuts." Then on stream they were like, "Oh, that doesn't work, -4." But because Jet has educated us big time, like we knew that it's a weird, not technically correct interaction, but it works.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, I don't know if you heard the story, but I talked about it on that cast. I actually hop into Lamby's Discord and watch Jet stream a lot, but I've like renamed myself because I'm trying to do it incognito, and my name is like
Whoa.
not
Secret
anymore.
Brendan.
No,
Now it's not
Brendan
secret.
account.
You've just given it away.
I've changed it already, but I would hop in there at like night, like I'm going to bed and Jet streaming for some
Sure.
reason or another. My name was Sammy Snaps, and I got away with it.
Sammy's Snaps.
Nobody
Now they know. Now they
suspected a thing.
Well, now everyone's gonna know your next name. It's gonna be like something alliterative again, right? Like
Like Jimmy Snaps.
no, like Jimmy
That's what
Snaps.
it's gonna be.
Jimmy Snaps. It's gonna be something like that, right?
Timmy Thanos or
Oh yeah.
Bobby Black Knight. Something.
Whoa, you're really
Bobby
on it.
Black Knight.
You're really
you were
on it
saying?
today.
Yeah.
Jesus,
All right, let's-
Davey Discard over here.
Yeah, Davey discard. Let's head into our Ben and Snap section. This is our listener question section. If you want to get your question right out in next week's podcast, you just comment on YouTube. Lamby, feel free to hop into these. A lot of them are kind of general. First one here is from a comics fan. They say, "Gotta disagree with Brendan." That's how the good ones start.
It's over. It's over.
As why I play this game. I don't play this game for the variants. I play this game because it's Marvel. If it didn't have a Marvel IP, I would have quit playing months ago. No rank protection, horrendously expensive bundles. Yeah, preying on FOMO, lack of variety in game modes, RNG, etc., etc. One the big takeaways. There was actually like a few people were talking on this, and there were replies. I think I underappreciate how many people play this game for the IP, because at risk of offending our audience, which I know this will, the IP it's actually not even neutral for me. It's a downside. It was a
Right. Take it from a flesh and blood player to no IP.
yeah, it was a downside for me. But I thought the card game was so good that I loved it anyway, and I liked that the characters are unique. But ultimately, yeah, I think it's an aspect that we don't appreciate enough sometimes when we talk about just the game in general. Is that I guess the majority of the player base is just playing it because it's a Marvel game.
I'm going to level with you.
Mhm.
It was a downside for me too, because my exposure to Marvel was all from the MCU. And so when this game came out, it was just like, I am sick of this. Like,
Yeah.
I am sick of these B- movies.
Oh,
I feel
God.
like I'm being very
Minus-
generous by calling them B-.
More like minus
I
2K subscribers right there, bro.
Oh no! Like I one of the things that I have done through this is like it's converted me from someone who is only known from the MCU,
Yeah.
to someone who knows who like Gwenpool is or Echo, right? No, Echo's
Yes.
MCU now, right? But like I know
Before
who
that,
like
yeah.
I know who Gwenpool is. I know who like all these minor characters in the movies that I never really like gathered as themselves, right? Like Domino in the Deadpool movie, right? That's the Domino in our game. I didn't know that. Like, I mean, I knew that, but like, I didn't know she was like a real character. It's just like, these are all things that like, I was not familiar with the comics in any real way, right? I was familiar with like their mass media representations. And now I know like Blackagar Boltagon, right? Like I know Medusa's full name.
Yeah.
Fun fact, Medusalith Amaquelin Boltagon.
I thought you were gonna say
Like-
Medusa oblongata or something.
No, it's actually dumber. Like, but like I've gained an appreciation for the ways in which I've gained an appreciation for the comics that I probably wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah.
And it's definitely gone from being a negative when I only associated it with the MCU and just like, you know, general corporate slop to like something that like there are actually exciting and fun things happening, right? Like there are like real things to latch on to here when you read the comics, and it's not just like a movie where they spent $200 million making Paul Rudd look a year younger or whatever.
Yeah, Lamby, were you a Marvel fan before the game came out?
Yeah, actually very similar to KM. My exposure to Marvel was actually like I actually was a bigger fan of like specifically X-Men, because like the X-Men was really part of my childhood. The 90s X-Men, the cartoon series was like way more part of my childhood than like the like some of these Marvel things that are happening right now. But I would say one thing that's also very similar to KM is that my Google search bar is literally all these Marvel hero names right now. Like I had to search what these were, because like I'm a lore person. Like I love the lore of like stuff. So when I play these cards, I need to know where they are from. So I will Google and search and like try and not really understand, but just like subconsciously like remember who these people are. So that has helped me increase my Marvel knowledge a decent amount, because if not, my exposure was really just like 90s X-Men and MCU movies. I actually ended up really enjoying. Okay, so I don't really think a lot of you know my story, but I jumped to this game firstly not because of like a personal choice. It's more not really because I really wanted to at the start. Was because I was like priced in to continue doing card games, and then Marvel was just something I had on my phone, Marvel Snap. But like I ended up like loving this a lot without realizing why at first. And then I realized that the snap mechanic, like snapping in Marvel Snap, snapping in Marvel Snap is actually something that I have missed in every other card game, because in every other card game there is no poker aspect. Like really, it's really the poker aspect for me. Like I love poker so much, and Marvel Snap lets me play. Well, I call it Marvel Poker. I mean, they'll never say it's Marvel Poker, but like I call it like Marvel Poker, because honestly, this has been the closest thing that I can like play competitively like to poker, and like I really enjoy this aspect, and like the genius of integrating this mechanic into this game. To me, it's the biggest selling point and why I can keep going and streaming this game, because it's exciting. Like the snapping aspect is actually very exciting for me. Yeah.
If I can expand upon that, one thing that I think the Marvel Snap does differently from other card games, I think the more you play other card games, the more you understand, the better you get, the more you realize that it's actually your deck playing against your opponent's deck. And in Marvel Snap, I actually feel like you play against your opponent, and it feels really, really good, and it feels really unique. Like,
Feels way better. Yes, agree. It feels way better.
Yeah.
It's the best card game there is.
Yeah.
I actually think it really is. Like,
it is
one of the best ones I've ever played. Yeah.
Really good. Ben Brode, Gwyn
Genius
Brode
game.
did it again.
Genius game indeed. Really genius game, honestly.
He relinked the fire.
Yeah. I don't actually think they knew how good their game was, because it feels like they wanted it to be very casual, but like the depth of this game is crazy.
Yeah, they didn't know how competitive, like they didn't know how good it was at the top end. I don't think that's why. That's why the current state of Marvel Snap competitive feels like borderline criminal, because it's like, holy shit, this game is actually so good. Like in terms of competitive card game, I mean, I've said it a million times on the podcast. Like I've never played anything else that comes close. When I play Marvel Snap in a competitive setting, I'm physically fucking sweating. Like it is intense.
I agree.
I am too, but I guess I always am, right? Yeah. Just naturally sweating.
It's so good. It's one of those games where it's like, even if we don't get any official support ever, or for a long time, like the fundamental framework is something that can be applied to maybe this game in the future, but also other games moving forward.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think it's important for card games to break the loop of what is ultimately the variance of how my deck stacked up after shuffling versus your deck how it stacked up after shuffling, which is two relatively close to optimal pilots, and more about like, I have to play against my opponent. I have to think about my opponent's patterns, their tendencies, like, and then if you get in person, like their facial features, their reactions, like, I don't know, it's so fucking good.
That could be dangerous. You match up against me, you stare at my facial features, you get lost in my eyes. Yeah. That's how I win.
Cam's got pit stains down to his shoes.
You don't notice them because of my beautiful eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, what Brandon said is like super. I know we are going on and on about this topic and maybe digressing a bit, but like, I think it's so relevant to me right now. Like when I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And like when I was very successful in Yu-Gi-Oh! One of the biggest things that won for me, right? Like, which is actually what I'm doing in Marvel Snap right now, which is the turn timer. Like, the longer my opponent thinks in like IRL TCGs, right, I'll just freaking stare the guy down. And like, as he's shuffling his cards in his hands, I more or less know what he's gonna do already because he's taking so long to think through what might be possible. It's actually the same thing in Marvel Snap. And like, I've applied that so many times, and like, it's more often correct than wrong. So Marvel Snap has actually given me the most human interaction I've ever had out of any online card game. And I cannot stress how important that is for me personally.
Yeah. I love getting Miss Marvel emoted.
Yeah, we're actually going to talk about that, believe it or not. Next one is from DM. This is, they won't understand this reference, Lamby, this for UKM. I almost spit my tea out when I cut to black after Dune 3, your mom.
Yeah. Yeah,
totally don't understand what the hell this is.
It's my favorite episode of Dune. It's my favorite Dune sequel, Your Mom, Dune Your Mom.
Yeah. All right, next one is from an unsought thought. On topic of being tilted, I want second hitter to add a setting to auto-mute opponents, and I want opponents to know they've been muted, so when they try to...
Not bad, that's not bad, yeah. It's like reverse BM.
Like, you press the button and just like a loud...
No, he wrote it out. He wants us to say, emote not received.
Interesting. It's like reverse BM, right? It's like your opponent wants to spam you, but you want them to know that you're not getting spam. But
I feel
think
like that's
what-
too much.
I
I
think
feel
it's
like
too
if
much
you
as
want
well.
to, yeah, I feel like if you want to opt out, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you want to gain a psychological advantage and opt out, it's like, all right, cut it out, right? Like,
Yeah.
not to put too fine a point on it, but I know that being someone who tilts over emotes is something I should work to be better at, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not like
Like,
I'd love to be able to opt out of it, but also it's like I don't want to punish other people because I'm mad as shit, you know?
Yeah. Like you realize you're like, wow, there's something very human and flawed about me for being so like having this reaction. But you're like, at the same time, it's really fucking annoying when you press that emote. When you're, it's like, it's just frustrating when people do that.
I'll tell you the most frustrating thing though is if you put the do not emote title on, people emote you more.
Of course, it's the same when you tell somebody not to do something, they will do it more, right? It's very simple. It's very simple.
asking
But
for
also,
it.
I think what they have right now in the game is actually adequate, which is if you mute somebody, it's like perma muted. I don't know if you guys realize this.
Oh,
you don't have to
yes.
mute them again.
Oh, believe
Yeah.
me, I know.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Distinctly aware. Sometimes
I've
my
played a
friends
lot
will
of
be
games,
like,
yes.
sometimes my friends will be like, "Oh, I emoted you," and I'm just like, "Oh man, I've had you muted for like 3 months."
Wow.
Yeah.
I thought my opponents just got more respectful. What?
No,
I
they
didn't know
didn't. They
about
didn't get
this.
more respectful. They were probably spamming you at like 10 emotes per second. You just didn't know because you muted them.
That's actually happened to me before. Is someone was like, "I was spamming emotes at you. Why didn't you?" I'm
Same,
surprised
same.
you didn't get angry. And just
Same,
like I didn't
same,
even
same.
see it.
Someone stream
Like,
sniping you and starting to realize that their emotes don't work. I'm like, oh shit.
I didn't even
Yeah.
see it, man.
All right. Next one is from Paula Croy. They say, question for the next podcast. You've talked before about shifting the energy curve for 3 costs, especially. What is your ideal cost ratio for cards? For example, right now we have 2 power, 1 cost, 3 power, 2 cost, 4 power, 3 cost, 6 power, 4 cost, 9 power, 5 cost, 12 power, 6 cost. So it's just talking about the ratio of
Right.
cost, like the vanilla
Okay.
ratios.
Yes. So I think the issue isn't so much that the vanilla ratios are bad. They might be. I'm not going to dive into that because I frankly have no idea. I'm unqualified to comment on that. The issue is how far certain costs have diverged from their baseline, right? Like when we look at 3s and 2s, there are not a lot of costs significantly diverged from that, right? Like you have like a 3-5 with upside, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's crazy. Wow, a 3-5. There's Gladiators, a 3-8 with a significant downside. Yeah. Okay, cool. And then you go to 4, and it's like, oh, that's a 414, right? Like, okay, that's like more than double the value. Oh, that's a werewolf by night, right? Like that's a not a Darkhawk anymore. Wow, shout out to Darkhawk. That's a 420 with Sentry and Nihilus, right? Like there's just like a bunch of ridiculous stuff that happens at 4 where it can go way past its baseline of 4-6. There's this massive divergence there. Whereas even at 6, you do not see that same divergence, right? There are no 625s in the game now that they nerfed Blob, you know? Like it is, even Blob's like a 615 to 620, right? That's a pretty big divergence, but it's not 2.5, right? Which is what 6 is to Miss Marvel, basically. Like whether or not the baseline numbers are right, and frankly, I have no idea if they are, 4s are very out of whack, right? Just baseline, because like, you know, Shang-Chi, that's a 413, right? Enchantress is like a 410 million.
Yeah, honestly, this point that KM has mentioned is something that we talk about on our other podcast as well, our video as well, 8 cubes a little bit. And like honestly, I don't really have anything to add because like, every time he brings up this point, I just think it's just correct. Like honestly, 4 cost cards are just disgusting. Like it's just too powerful. Like to be honest, okay, I wouldn't say too powerful because then they will take it as a thing that like maybe we want it nerfed. No, I don't really want like those stuff to get nerfed. But like I do think 4 cost cards are super overtuned to a certain extent. So like I really don't have much to add. I just think that he's right. Like it's not really about the stats at this point in time. It's about the effects that you tag along with the cost, and 4 cost is just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It goes so far above that baseline. And like for all I know, there is something that needs to change about the baseline. Like maybe 2 needs to be 2-4 and 3 needs to be 3-6 or something. I don't know, right? Like I don't know, right? But what I do know is if you do make a change like that, it gives you room to make the thing like a 4-8 or whatever, and then they're less far from the baseline. Right,
Yeah.
like if you make it like a 1-3 2-5 3-7. Okay, now I feel like I'm confusing myself. I'm not qualified to do this.
Yeah.
Someone who like understands the game better should probably do this. But like this it's like it is the kind of thing where it's like I can see how that would be a smart thing to do.
Yeah. Vanilla values are one of my favorite things to sort of understand. And I don't know, theorize about in card games, because once you understand the vanilla values of a card game, because they're not stated in the rule book or something like that, but they exist, right? They're the axes in which every card is balanced. It really helps you to understand what cards are actually powerful and which ones are not, because which ones exceed the vanilla values and at what cost, right? At what cost, not in terms of how much you're paying for them, but the flexibility of said card as well. But yeah. So vanilla values. Next one's from Snap Tactics, Ben and Snap listener question. With 2 new active Snap leagues, I'd like your thoughts on the following. What do you think is going to make a tournament league either successful or unsuccessful?
Okay, so I think I'm gonna start with this one first because I'm actually involved in both of them, like the Snap Judgments leagues and the Team Felicity league thing. So of course, all these are like super low production value stuff, right? Compared to like okay, so basically we are talking about leagues and all that. Like my impression of the leagues is like Overwatch League or like the Riot Circuit or that kind of stuff. So I feel like one of the and when I was in Hearthstone, like the Hearthstone at its peak form. So I feel like honestly, the leagues we have now is a very, very strong like player initiated initiative. But what pushes leagues over the top is it is supposed, okay, this is not something easy to do, but it's supposed to do, is it creates superstars. So what happens in all these like bigger leagues in other games that we see is that through watching this, people get the fans get people to idolize, and this builds superstars and then builds them in a direction of like fame and stardom or like popularity or whatsoever. Marvel Snap Leagues currently, these two don't have that potential right now, unless of course a lot of value and money is invested in production. But like I think the purpose of these leagues is to give fans a name to cheer on. And I think even though yes, we have some like more known people in the Marvel Snap scene right now, nothing comes close to what we have in other games yet, because those are heavily supported to produce superstars. And I think like for us to go near that direction, I think there needs to be direct second dinner involvement.
Right. I think my question would be to answer this with a question, which is, what do you define as success? Because if you are looking for these leagues to take, the people that started them to, I guess I would say sustainable content creation numbers, I don't really see that happening, right?
Yeah,
like that's the kind of thing. Like these are when these leagues are run in other sports, they are loss leaders for the company, right? They are advertisements for the company, right? These are not the things that typically make money on their own or draw eyeballs on their own. They are given legitimacy by their official nature, right?
Yes.
And so what your view of success is for like these leagues, the Snap Judgments League and the Felicity League, I don't really know, but one thing that I will say is I feel like they're jumping too far ahead in the timeline. Marvel Snap is not at a place where the people doing content are the people who are the best players. And Marvel Snap is not at a place where I think you can shortcut around the open tournament system, right? Because if it's just, because I believe the Snap Judgments League is a bunch of content creators and patrons of the Snap Judgments podcast, correct? I believe it was a $1 patron to get into that. And the Felicity League was invite only, right? And that's not an inherent flaw in either of them. It's just like the reality of the situation is we're talking about invite only, mostly content creator based leagues. And so the people they're going to provide value for are the content creators involved in them. And I think generally speaking, that's the kind of thing that happens later in a life cycle when there is a compelling reason to watch those, when like the superstars have been made and their involvement can make those things greater. And right now, I'm just not sure Marvel Snap has those. And so I tend to prefer, if someone came to me and was like, KM, do you want to run a league? I would say I would rather run a tournament, right?
Yes. Personally, I would also rather run a tournament, which is what I've been doing for a while now. I think tournaments actually showcase talent per se way more. So yeah, that's what I'm gravitating towards as well. But I think I guess with these leagues, I think maybe they just wanted to do it just because, like, to see how it goes. It's a very just because thing, and I feel like in Marvel Snap there's so little involvement from like content between content creators and like non-content creators. Like, I think anything that is around can be something that can get them a bit more involved, you know. So I think it's fine, but like in terms of like success, because the question was like whether it's gonna be successful or not successful, right? I feel like now these team leagues will not pop off. Like in terms of success, I don't think it will pop off. It's just there for you to drive like a bit more community involvement, but I don't think it's gonna like pop off like bam whatsoever, you know.
Right, like that's why I asked, like, what is your definition of success? Right, like, what is the goal of this? And I think for both of them, it was just I'd like to create some fun content with my friends and get some get a competitive setting going, right?
Correct.
And I think if that's your goal, then that's your goal, and you will absolutely achieve it. If your goal is to be like the premier esport Marvel Snap thing, and I've seen a couple of like, and these two leagues are not doing that, but I've seen like some things
attempts
at doing that. And each time I just don't think they're particularly well thought out, right? Like the number one thing that has to happen before Marvel Snap esports happens, and I cannot stress this enough, is spectator mode. We need a spectator mode. Like it has to happen.
Yeah.
And I think until then, all of this stuff, all these attempts at doing stuff, it's like, you know, okay, maybe you'll be able to do something, but until there's a spectator mode, this cannot be a real thing.
Yes.
You know?
I think spectator mode and also official involvement, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think one player hand is okay, and it's like reasonable if you get a high quality stream. But I mean, it happened in the Snapfan World Championship. You can't do the mobiles. You can't do the mobiles. You can't do the laggy ones.
Playing on mobile in the Snapfan World Championship. It's a $3,000 tournament, and it's like that sucks.
I wanna piggyback off something Lamby said, and I want to add some anecdotal experience. So I've casted a lot of Flesh and Blood tournaments, other card game tournaments, but I've casted Flesh and Blood at the Pro Tour and World Championship level. And there's one thing that is reinforced over and over again above everything else, and that's with one thing it sets the Pro Tour or the World Championship apart from a coverage standpoint, and that is narratives. It's all about building narratives. It's all about telling the story of the player and building up the players, so you can string that along for, you know, Pro Tour to Pro Tour, year to year, and this is what people get behind. Like card games, I'm gonna say it. Card games, from a spectator point of view, it's hard for me to think of something that could be more dog shit than a card game. It is insane domain knowledge, insane, almost unparsable for a layman. Like, they're so bad. But what people can get behind is individuals like that have stories, like teams against teams, regions against regions, and like that is what elevates coverage past, because like the medium you're working with is really bad. Marvel Snap is probably the best one. It's probably the easiest one to understand, but the medium is terrible. Like domain knowledge just makes it so unapproachable. It's so complex, but you have to position in a way that you build up these narratives of these players, because that's really what gets butts and seats. I mean, wrestling, WWE, you got to build that stuff.
Yeah, shout out to Cody. Finish the story.
All right. Next one is from Robert Riven. They say, America Chavez. Oh, I love this one. America Chavez. If America Chavez would gain her old effect back, would she be back in Dex? Or have we outgrown her? Maybe her nerf was pointless. So
can I just say that I read the show notes and it literally says F America Chavez. So I thought it was like rip America Chavez, but I guess it means the same thing in the context of this question.
Yeah.
Ridiculous, especially when Thanos has been showing up. She's like the freest Thanos include of all time. Do you like drawing Mind Stones on one? Yeah, I love drawing Mind Stones on one. I'm a big fan of it.
They asked this question.
I want to play 11 card decks, man.
This is the wrong panel to ask, because I think everyone here was like an OG Chavez believer, which kind of sounds ridiculous. You know, we're in the year 2024. The concept that there was non-Chavez believers back in the day is blasphemous, but they existed. And they were not on this panel right here. This is a bunch of
Chavez. And they must be rooted out and destroyed. We must. We must wage a holy war, a Butlerian jihad on the non-Chavez believers.
Chavez is freaking nuts. It's freaking nuts. It's like just such a good card, and
please bring her back.
I love it. Love it. I like 11 card decks. You know, we were
11 card decks.
We were all stressing over the 12 card of Thanos before this tournament. If that could have just been America Chavez, would have made our lives easier.
Yes.
I'll tell you. All right, next one. Echo Not. With decks like Hela, Tribunal, and Sarah, I don't see why Angela Kitty cannot be reverted.
I do think Angela can go back a little bit.
But like you can't actually revert Angela though, right? Because it's like, all right, well, like we talk about how far off baseline the 4s are, right? That's just Angela at 2. Where it's just like any deck you play her in, she's like a 2/8.
Yeah, Angela and
it's like
Elsa, right?
a deck that you play, like not even like you have to play Kitty or Nightcrawler or whatever, and just like most decks when you play an Angela on 2, that's a 2/8. It just is.
But the thing is, now our only good early scaler is Hope Summers. Like, I think we need one back.
I would love to have one back, but it's like the kind of thing that can only happen after they rebalance those costs, right? Or at 3, right? Like it can't happen at 2, because if you have a good early scaler at 2, by definition, it's just going to be like twice as big as every other 2. Like it's just going to be like, a 2/8 index that are not built for it and a 2/12 index that are. And it's just like, I don't know. It feels hard to, do to me. Reverting like, Angela is like,
I mean, they're not going to make the 4s all worse. So why not just make the 2s better, right? Like it's impossible that they make the 4s all worse. There's so many good 4s and overpowered 4s. Why not just make some of the 2s better again? Like, I mean, maybe Elsa instead of Kitty.
But like, wouldn't that just sort of encourage the same sort of good stuff like dog shit, right? Like, okay, now the deck with the 4s gets to play a broken 2 too. Here's my good card soup. Enjoy it, right? Like,
I mean, I would think Kitty or Angela, but not both.
Yes, of the 2, definitely, I would say Kitty.
Yeah, Kitty, fine.
Yeah, I agree. I'm nostalgic for both of those cards. So
same.
Yeah, great cards. Anyway, next one's from B Money. They say, do you think bundles going forward?
Money?
B money, not D money. B money.
Oh, okay.
B money. All right. Do you think bundles going forward will be cash only, or will gold bundles return? Is gold mostly used to buy variants or to complete albums? I also have a ton of gold with nothing to buy. So some context, Lamby. Yeah, I bought.
Hilarious.
Yeah,
this is hilarious because B money is asking about cash, but like. Yeah.
I talked on the pod just last week. I bought a couple really good value gold bundles. Like with money that had a lot of gold in them, and
B money.
Now all of the bundles cost cash, and I have a bunch of useless gold, which eventually I'll probably spend on variants because I'll see something I like. I've got this abundant amount of resources I've detached from as real world currency.
How's anyone supposed to give a correct answer to this question? Because like you spend gold on whatever you want to spend on, right?
I got you. I have the mathematically, factually correct answer. Are you ready for this? You ready for this? They're absolutely going to put gold bundles back in the store again. Are you guys kidding me? Like it's been like a month and a half without it. All right, chill. We've had that before. Relax.
That was a turd move by them. Like that was a big turd move. Like honestly, if I didn't have a podcast, I might have quit the fucking game. Like it was pretty annoying that they did that. Like I know that it's like, oh, there's like something might be data mined and like it's like, bro, you can't be selling us like all these gold bundles and then take that away as a spendable currency. This is the thing. Here's
the thing though. Like people talk about like you're taking it away as a spendable currency. This fucks me up because
it feels like we're a rat colony, bro, and like they're trying to fuck with us.
Yes, that's what I want to get at. Is like. It's not taken away as a spendable currency, but we're all so fucking like we're a rat colony. We've been trained to know that eventually they're going to make a bundle that's better value than spending gold on credits. So we can't spend that gold on credits. We can't do that. We are not allowed to do that. We have to wait for the bundle, guys. We need to wait for the bundle. We cannot spend that gold on credits because if we do, it might be bad value at some point in the future.
Hey, I'm trying to afford this bougie ass game. Please spare me for a fucking gold bundle. I mean,
don't bring it back. I'm sure.
Yeah, that was a fucking turd move. So please don't do that in the future. That was not nice. Next one, guys. Bro, I'm sorry, KM. This one is going to be a little mean. I think you'll appreciate the comedy though.
Oh hell yeah!
He says, guys, does anyone know if KM complained about Lockjaw back in the beta when there was a survey? So KM. No, but that's not it. Someone comments that not the original poster. Someone comments and they go. He would have mentioned it, surely. And then later comes back and comments again and says, weekly, period. I almost pissed my pants. It was like he put effort into that.
God damn it.
Context, Lamby. So basically, we were talking
hold on. I got to get one joke off in return.
Okay.
This is my favorite. KM Best constantly mentions that he thought Lockjaw should be nerfed in the beta podcast.
Yep, that's it. So basically, last week we were talking about Lockjaw. KM was like, I was in a cave with sticks, rubbing sticks together, complaining out Lockjaw, saying he was one of the first people to complain about it. And someone here was just hitting him a little meme.
I have brought it up probably every week for the last few weeks.
I think they
fair
aggrandized that a bit, but yeah.
No, I actually don't think they did. I think that's actually just an accurate statement. I probably have brought it up every week for the last 4
Yeah,
weeks.
he brought it up on 8 Cubes like multiple times as well. So it's
no, like,
relevant.
that is 100% accurate.
Yeah.
I can't believe he's like, surely he like comments in such sincerity. This other guy, and he's like, surely would have mentioned it. Comes back weekly. I'm just like, bro. All right, next one's from Greg. They say, question, what is your final opinion of Wheel of Time, Sanderson versus Jordan?
I have no idea what the hell.
I just finished reading Wheel of Time like a month ago, which I've obviously mentioned weekly. One of the things that really struck me reading Sanderson, because I haven't read him in a bit. I read like Mistborn when I was, I don't know, like 23 or something. Like the first 3 Mistborns. I've read all of Way of Kings, up to release. I'm forgetting the Stormlight Archive. There we go.
Yep.
And I was struck going from Jordan to Sanderson because there was instantly like a lot of use of italics for emphasis that was not present in Jordan's writing, but was very present in Sanderson's writing. And it's weird to read that because it's like I'm realizing that several of my typing patterns are very similar to how Brandon Sanderson writes. So like going from a book that was written very clearly in like mildly pervy 60, 70-year-old Anglo voice to a book that is written in like a very similar style to something like to the way I write. It was definitely a swap. I think here's some Wheel of Time spoilers for you. I think the way in which Semiraj was dealt with helped bridge the gap because that was so insanely Jordan that it actually there's this great gag where Sanderson like talks about like how he would not have done it, but it was in the notes and so he did it and he regrets doing it. And the way in which she was dealt with was so insanely Robert Jordan that I really do feel like it bridged the gap.
Lamby, I want to apologize for bringing you on to our Wheel of Time podcast that we occasionally mention Marvel Snap.
My favorite
all I
Wheel of Time
can say
podcast.
is I 100% agree with what Kim said because I have no idea what else to say.
Hell yeah, I cooked. This is a good call. Agreeing with me worked.
Last question is from Mitchell. They say, by the way, I'm pretty sure this is Mitchell Elam, or what was also Michelle Lamb. Because they changed their name. They made it Mitchell-Lamb. So I think they heard
probably
the feedback.
because of our critique.
No, I think they heard the feedback. So it's clearly Mitchell. Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Question after a week, do you think Hope Summers is going to be treated like Elsa or Miss Marvel? The only time I spend money in Snap is on the occasional season pass. And while I don't regret getting to play with Elsa and when she was good, I really should have gotten Miss Marvel instead. Thanks.
What do you? Oh, I get it. They're asking if she's going to be treated like Elsa or Miss Marvel, as in like, will she be nuked or will she be like allowed to live? I expect her to be allowed to live.
I think she will be allowed to live. Like based on like, wait, do you say the same thing? You said she'll be allowed to live, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I also think she'll be allowed to live. Like she's good, and I think nerfing her will make her bad, and they don't want to make her bad. Yeah. You know, I think she's just gonna be gonna be chilling around with the rest of the people, just chilling as good cards that don't need to be nerfed. Can you imagine? Do you remember what happened when they nerfed Doctor Doom? It was so unrequired, you know. But like okay, so Miss Marvel, Hope Summers might be one of those cards that if they nerf it becomes so underplayed and so I think just leave her as she is. She's actually really just fine, and I think it should be trust the SD people. I guess they know that this is going to be a fine card, so I think they wouldn't really nerf her in that kind
surely
of, like,
they definitely
way.
don't have it in their wheelhouse to release a card way too strong.
From the designers of
That's
Loki.
never happened before.
From the designers of Loki, surely.
But like at least this card, it seems like they know what they're doing and they don't think they will need to like nerf it beyond repair.
God, I will say they've kind of been on a roll. Like they haven't really, like, when's the last time they really blew the game up?
Well,
Blob?
Galactus. Blob, definitely Blob.
Bro,
yeah, prenup Blob was a problem.
That was pretty good. I think you did that on accident, but that was pretty fun.
It was not.
It's on purpose. It's on purpose. I swear, I said Galactus blew up. No, it's on purpose. It's on purpose.
You can't back into that now. You can't
What a coincidence.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Oh, man. All right. If you want to get your question right on next week's podcast, come on to YouTube. We'll get to it. Lamby, I want to thank you for coming on the pod once again. Always great having you on. I want to give you a chance to shout out everything you're up to, where people can find you, all that good stuff. Cam shooting the pit stains in the back.
Yeah,
Like
it's
it.
crazy.
All right, so if you want to watch most of my main content, you can follow me on twitch.tv/Lambyseries TV. You can also follow me on x.com/LambyseriesGG. And last but not least, on YouTube at Lambyseries Gaming. Thank you for having me once again.
Awesome. And if you listen to the podcast, you enjoy it, number one thing you do is leave us a review. Apple Podcasts or Spotify or ratethispodcast.com/snapshot. Video version, youtube.com/@the_snapshot. Hit that subscribe, especially if you've been listening. I have a Lorcana podcast that's like a couple weeks old. It's already cruising past this one. You guys can't let that happen. So please hit subscribe. Twitter, Brandon APG, KMBestMS, Lambyseries GG. Cam streaming.
You say your Lorcana podcast is like a couple weeks old? It's like 40 episodes in.
I reinvented it though. You know, I had to get. I reinvented
it's
it.
a couple weeks old.
Hey, I'm trying to light a fire under the people. Maybe I'm stretching the truth of it. Cam is streaming in the evening sometimes when.
Yeah, that's pretty much less likely on hot location days. Most other days, probably.
All right, sweet. Thank you all so much for listening. Check out the Snapfan World Championship. If you didn't, go watch the VOD. Look at the top 8 decks. Enjoy the game. See y'all next week.
Bye-bye.